Okay, we are going to start today with the Song of Songs. And I'm going to talk about 4 things over the course of this next couple hours or hour and a half now. So I'm going to put it in the chat. So I'm going to talk about, number 1, I'm going to talk about sensuality and discretion. Number 2, I will talk about attracting commitment. Number 3, I'll talk about the center of the book. And number 4, we'll talk about grace in the Song of Songs. Okay. Oops. All right, so that's the plan for today. I wish the chat would show up. Okay, that's fine. Okay, all right, so let's begin. So first thing I'm going to talk about is the dynamic, the tension in the text between sensuality and discretion. So sensuality, you know what it means. Does anybody know what discretion means? Who can summarize to me discretion? What does that word mean? You can just put your hand on the screen if you want to answer. Yes, Philippe, go ahead.
I think it means respecting privacy.
Very good, right? Discretion means you're reserved, you're secretive, you're not out there, right? Yeah, it's a kind of being reserved, holding back, right? That's discretion. So we're going to talk about this, these 2 voices that are in the text, the voice of giving and the voice of holding back, right? We have really both voices, but let's start first with the voice of giving. So clearly when you read the text from the start, right, you get the sense that the lovers are very generous with each other, right? This is unusually generous. There is no restraint. There's no, barriers to their love. Especially the woman is extremely giving in a reckless almost way, right? She's quite reckless with the way she offers herself, right, to her lover. There's really no holding back. He eventually, right, becomes also very, very generous. And there's really a sense, you get a sense that they're just caught up with each other and they're just flowing and they're very recklessly, right, in this relationship, right? And what's interesting is that the author doesn't seem to have a problem with that, right? These are very young lovers. They're inexperienced. They're trying everything. They're not following, remember we talked about this, they're not following the guidelines, the traditional norms of courtship. They're really kind of flowing with this relationship almost recklessly, right? And the author, right, surprisingly seems to be on the side of the lovers. In other words, you get the sense that the author is embellishing this love, right? Instead of, I mean, if I was a biblical author, right, I would probably write about how reckless they were. I think I mentioned that last time. And then end with saying, see, they were so reckless and now they failed, right? They did not end up with a beautiful love because of all the mistakes they made. No, here you see the author really seems to be siding with them, right? Seems to be on their side. Even though they're so reckless and transgressive, the author is embellishing their love, is putting them in a garden, in a lush garden. There are beautiful descriptions of their love. And of course, there is this ending, right, where you see that their love really has become as strong as, almost as strong as death, right? They say that towards the end. So that's the first thing you see. First of all, certainly there is a celebration on the part of the author, and that's the first thing you can write. The author is definitely celebrating this very free giving of the self that the 2 lovers have with regards to each other. This lack of holding back, the sensuality of the text, the way they give themselves to their beloved in such a generous and reckless way is definitely first impression you have about the text, right? So make sure you jot this down. Now, there's another voice in the text, and this is interesting. In the middle of this lush, giving, and generous, right, lovemaking that they have, you have a voice that comes up 3 times. And this is the voice of discretion. This is a voice of warning. Did anybody catch that voice? Did anybody hear that voice come up 3 times saying the opposite, right? So here we have the lovers are giving, and the voice is saying actually the opposite. Anybody catch that voice? Philippe, do you have it?
Daughters of Jerusalem, swear to me by the gazelles, by the deer in the field, that you will never awaken love until it is ripe. That was actually one of my questions because it was very confusing and contradicting.
You got it, right? You absolutely got it. There's a contradiction in the text, right? Are we to give ourselves freely, or are we to follow the advice of the woman to say, who is telling us, right? Don't arouse or awaken love until it's so desired. So let me write here are the references, right? This voice comes up 3 times. I'm putting in the chat. It comes up in chapter 2, verse 7. It comes up in chapter 3, verse 5, and then in chapter 8, verse 4. Each time you have the same thing. I'll read it really quick for those who didn't catch that. So chapter 2, verse 7, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and the deer of the field, that you do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases, until it is ready. So it's as though she's saying, do what I say, don't do what I do. She's herself not doing that. She's stirring love all over the place, right? She's awakening. She's actually arousing her lover. Several times it says that, right? And he's not ready. So she's all over, right? She's very, very precocious, right? And yet at the same time, you sense that she's pulling back, or she's saying we ought to pull back and be careful and not arouse or awaken love until it is ready. So we have, as Philippou noticed very correctly, we have a contradiction in the text. And so we are the readers, we are reading the text, and we have to ask ourselves, well, which is it? Am I encouraged to give myself to love freely? Am I encouraged to be reckless, like the people in the text? Or should I be more careful? Should I hold back? So what do you think? How, and remember, the author is putting the 2 voices together, right? Make sure you write this down. Both voices are in the text, right? And so what the author seems to be implying is that we have to hear both voices together. It's not one or the other, right? We have to be able to hear them together to carry the tension. And so here's my question now. How are we supposed to do this? Either I give or I don't give. What is this? I give, I don't give, I give, I don't give, right? What is the author trying to tell us? What is the wisdom here? What do you think? Davidov, go ahead.
So for me, maybe it's more of an issue with like a misinterpretation on my part. When I read the line, I was confused about the gazelles, but when I read the line, love until it pleases, I thought she was advising people, or advising the maidens of Jerusalem to not settle for less, to kind of like chase a relationship that's passionate and not settle one that's just a formality or any less than what they dreamed of. And with that, if that's the message, then like that wasn't contradictory for me, because I felt like that was in line with what she was saying earlier about her relationship.
Okay, I like that, right? This is the idea, right? What you're saying is that she's saying, okay, see, I am pursuing my love, right? And you should do that the same, right? I'm pursuing someone I deeply love. Don't settle for less. Okay, I hadn't thought of that. That works. You can say that. Anybody else? I see Suresh, I see Georges. Go ahead. Suresh, and then Georges, and then Kogan.
To answer the question, Professor, if you're supposed to hear both voices together, I would say think less with your feelings and use more of your brains, use more of your logic.
Okay, so maybe what she's saying is that, okay, you should have feelings, but you have to temper them, right? You have to be careful with your feelings. So love, but, right? So it's an invitation, maybe. So you guys could write this down. Maybe it's an invitation to be cautious, right? To guard your heart. You can have a heart, you can have feelings, but you have to also guard your feelings, right? Be careful who you give the feelings to and when you give the feelings. So maybe, yes, we could see that. Let's see, Georges, go ahead.
I think that both should definitely be heard together, because it gives full um the full reaction to what she's feeling at the moment, because it's obviously that she has intrinsic thoughts that are going on here, but a lot of this is also subconscious. I think that's her subconscious that comes in, and it's telling it's warning to other people, like, obviously she's enjoying this moment, but obviously to wait until love is ripe to engage in it, because it's I don't want to say shackles, it's more like a spirit. She feels like she's possessed by a spirit of love that she's almost incapable of freeing herself from. So it's caught her up, and now she can't get loose of the momentum. So you should wait until it is ripe before you engage in such a thing, because then you might have more self-control. You might be more safe. Like you said, you choose a partner at a suitable time. So yeah, definitely because if you engage in it at the wrong time, it could probably cause more turmoil in your life than satisfaction.
Okay, very nice. You catch very well the way that she's caught up in this love, right? She's almost a slave to this love, right? She says, in fact, several times, "I'm sick with love," right? She's obsessed, right? And so she realizes this can be dangerous, right? This power, love is very powerful, and if it is in the wrong place, the wrong time, it can be very dangerous, right? So fair enough, I will take that one. I'm going to go in a different direction, by the way, but I'm just saying this works. You can have that interpretation. That works. Kogan, tell us.
I also interpreted it differently. I interpreted it as the daughters, the woman is saying to the daughters of Jerusalem, like, don't burst my bubble, don't wake me up from my love. That she's like in love, and the daughters of Jerusalem, like, you infer that they're saying, like, you're going too fast, you need to slow down, this is crazy. And she's kind of saying, I hear you, but my love is amazing. I hear you, but don't wake me up. I need to see where this goes. I need to see how it ripens. I'm in it. Don't burst my bubble. And I mean, I still think the tension is there of like, is she going too fast versus should she slow down and think about her context and where she is and what kind of society? But I don't think it's coming from her. I think it's coming from them. And she like somewhat knows it, but like can't accept it.
Yes, I like that. So here the restraint is coming from the outside, right? It's not her inner voice telling her to slow down. She's hearing it all around her, right? And she's trying to resist it. Okay, nice. So all this works, right? The text seems to imply there's a tension, right? Maybe it is wise to bring those into balance, but I want to give a slightly different perspective. I want to talk about here the art of seduction. I think this is what we are dealing here with. The art of seduction. I think there is some wisdom here in the text about what it means to be a seductive woman or a seductive man. So let me explain. What is seduction? Seduction is simply this. Seduction is the art of giving of yourself a little at a time. Let me write it down, right? It's the art of giving of yourself a little at a time. So this is not about being cautious, right? This is not about being, making sure you have the right person, calculating, right? That is the right moment. No, this is a way of giving yourself that you practice throughout the relationship, even when it's with the right person, even when it's, even after the marriage, you are still practicing this, right? So this is an ongoing way of giving yourself. This is a way of giving yourself a little at a time. So let me explain. Let's imagine you go on a first date. And you feel very, actually, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story about how the woman didn't do this. This is something that I witnessed. So I was sitting in a coffee shop and I was listening to a couple behind me who was clearly on a first date. And this is how I knew this. So the woman was talking and talking and talking and talking. And the guy was like, I could barely hear the guy. I had to turn around to see what he looked like, right? He was just nodding and saying, yes, yes, yes. She was telling him about everything. She was going on about her girlfriends, her roommates, her job, her parents, her childhood trauma, on and on and on. And the guy, very sweet, was listening, right? Now imagine they go home. And let's first imagine the woman, how she will talk about this first date. So let's imagine the woman. What do you think she's going to tell her girlfriends when she gets home from that first date? What's she going to say about the guy? What do you think? Some smiles. Yes, Multani, go ahead.
That the guy was listening to him all the time, listening to her all the time.
Yeah, she's like, oh my God, what a sweet guy. I think I met my match. He's so sensitive. He's listening to me. I love this guy. Now, what is a guy gonna say when he goes home after this first date? Khalid, tell us.
Oh my God, she talks a lot. I can't listen to her all the time.
Okay, good. Excellent. Right? He's gonna be exhausted, right? In fact, this is probably the type of guy who will text her 3 weeks later, and the woman wondering why. Maybe listen to this women. When the guy's not texting you right away, you gotta ask yourself, how much did I talk? Did I overwhelm this guy? Right? So this is a perfect example, right, of giving too much too soon. Right? This you can do in conversation. You can. I mean, this is a balance, right? Something you want to work on every level. Conversation, revealing who you are, how you dress, how you become physically intimate, giving a little bit at a time, right? Never giving too much too soon. What happens when you give too much too soon? What is the result of that? Can anyone tell me?
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think when you give something to, like from my personal experience, like if someone giving, like I found it like if girls is like giving me everything, so he's like talking to me really fast, like yo, she want to go on the second date really fast. I'm like, nah, she probably be so easy for everyone. If next guy comes around, she's gonna be like, okay, let me just talk to him, and next week she's on a date.
Yes.
So like, I'm not interested in that kind of woman.
Okay, very good, right? It doesn't look like she's right trustworthy, and it's easy to lose interest, right? Because it's all there. There's no more, the journey is gone, right? The journey of exploration is already, destroyed. Kalik, tell us, and then Filippo.
I was gonna say pretty much the same thing. I feel like if there's no pursue, like you know, you have to kind of have a little bit of space and kind of, I would say, chase. If there is not that, and you just see them giving everything to you at once at the start, it kind of seems like something's wrong, or she's like crazy.
Good, Kelly. Are you listening, ladies? This is very good insight into the male mind that we often do not understand.
Don't quote me on that.
George is like, no. Filippo, tell us, enlighten us, and then Kogan. Let's hear the ladies on this.
Saying that we must create a game for you to chase.
I knew that.
Yes.
Not really. It's just like you can't like get everything at the same time. You have to.
What
has
is
to be
everything
day by
to get?
day. Like everything, as in like all your stories, all the
Right. So
the
if there
life
is a lot to
story.
say, that doesn't mean that that is everything.
Right, but like if it's just a conversation where the woman is the one telling everything, you know what I mean? Like it
I
has to be
understand.
even,
There has to be give and take.
right? It has to be even conversation, and that's
I
how
get the give and take part, but I don't think there is a fault in giving a lot, because that doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving all.
Well, let me step in here, because the text is saying this, right? The text is saying you want to pace yourself. Why? You pace yourself because otherwise you become overwhelming, right? It's a question of the other, right? How much can the other digest of you, right? How ready is the other to receive all of that information? So it's a kind of respect, I think, for the capacity of the other. I think that's what the text is saying. The text is saying pace yourself so that you do not overwhelm the other. You want to make sure they're ready, or it's the right time for that information. You don't want to just right. Same, by the way, same with physical intimacy, right? Some of us think we're ready, but we aren't, right? Sometimes there has to be a pace there too, right? And wait until the other is truly ready for that kind of depth, right? So that's, I think, what the text is saying. And it's good advice. It's less is more in relationships. That's what I have learned over the years. Less is more. So Kogan, yes, what do you want to add?
I think there's also something exciting about constantly learning something new about somebody. And it's like one day you fall in love with this aspect of them, and then you learn something new, and it's another thing and another thing. And I think, and now I don't want to say that couples get bored, but I think if you have all of your cards out on the table right away, you don't give yourself anywhere to go. So I think like also then you can develop together and learn new things about each other and your relationship and how you go together. Like keep it interesting and alive.
Yeah, very good. And I'll be with you in a second, Josh. I want to emphasize, right? This is not a game, right? This is simply cultivating mystery. It's also it's pacing yourself for the sake of the other. It's a sign of respect, really, right? When you hold back a little bit for the sake of the other. It's not about playing games and being hard to get and so forth. It's about really respecting the other's rhythm. We're going to talk about that rhythm in the next chapter, right? That we're going to do. But that's really, so does that make sense, Filippo? It's not about playing the game, it's about pacing yourself for the sake of the other's rhythm. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yes, I understand the text, and I understand that it's about respecting others and making sure that they're ready for the piece of information or whatever it is that you're giving up for. But I also feel that a lot of people are going to misinterpret what it means to hold back. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're holding back because you're trying to create a mystery, because that is not the case. You should hold back because you respect others' boundaries and not overstepping it.
The way you said it is perfect. That's it. Josh, you can close us on that one, then we'll move forward. Go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say, I think as well as for you don't want to give someone too much at once, because you don't know what they're uh what they're capable of taking at that moment. It's also for yourself, it's also to protect yourself. You don't want to open yourself up to people recklessly, people you don't know. You probably, especially if you're someone who's very open, it's you find that's how a lot of people often they're prone to be treated wrongly, easily by people who have ill thoughts. They can easily become mistreated. And I don't think it's that when I was going like this, I don't think it's that men are in love with the chase. I mean, some might be. I can't speak for all, but I think it's more like it's more like a destination, right? So you know where there's always a finish line. And I guess me personally, I wouldn't chase someone that keeps running away. So if the flag, if the finish line keeps changing, then at that point I'll just run another race or I'll go another journey. It's all a journey to get to know somebody. And that journey could be something beautiful. As she said, it's not that some people might misinterpret it. It's not that you want to give someone all that. It's not that you're giving someone everything all at once, but you do want to also protect yourself. You don't want to give off too much of yourself. You don't want to make yourself vulnerable to people you don't know. Feelings are very susceptible to other people's reactions sometimes.
Very good, excellent, right? So in essence, right, this is simply the invitation, balance things, balance your giving with a little bit of holding back. And I like the way Filippo mentioned, right, it's out of respect for how ready is that person, right? You want to balance how much you give them, and make sure that they're ready for that, whether it's a gift of sharing information or a gift of your body, right? Are they ready, right, for what I'm about to offer? And pacing yourself, really remaining attuned to the other where they're at, right? That is the key here with the art of seduction. So and again, also respecting one's own rhythm, right? Never letting ourselves be rushed, right? So there's two things: you don't rush the other, but you also don't let yourself be rushed. If you're not ready to reveal certain information, you keep it, right? If you're not ready to give certain parts of yourself, you also keep it, right? The idea is to really become more and more attuned to our inner wisdom, our inner sense of rhythm, right? This is what the text is saying. Don't let society norms or society expectations push you to give more than you're ready to give, or don't push others, right, to receive more than they're ready to receive. That's the idea. That's the art of seduction, right? Giving a little bit at a time, little bit of yourself, and then waiting to see what they give you, and so forth, right? Okay, so that's the first thing that the text is teaching us. Let's go to the second aspect of the text, which I want to go into, which is the attracting commitment. And then after that, we'll take a break. So, and then do the last part. So this is a very important part of this work, right? This is a very important part for us. A lot of us will find ourselves in relationships where maybe we're ready, but they're not ready, or they're ready and we're not ready. And most of the time we'll be thinking, well, why, I'm ready. We've been already 6 months. What is happening? Why isn't this person committing to me? Right. And in fact, worse, we might start to feel like the other person is straying, right? So it's not even that they're, kind of half in, half out, is that they're not even, right? They're in and out. So what do we do in this situation, right? when we're dealing with a partner who has a hard time committing to us, who is still out there, right? Who has a hard time being faithful even, right? What do we do in this context? In our civilization, we immediately just cut them off, right? But here, the woman here in the Song of Songs is going to reveal to us a very interesting piece of information and of wisdom. So I discovered this piece of wisdom as I was exploring a passage that kept repeating itself. So this was a passage, and I was curious. I was like, why is this repeated? Why is this repeating? What's going on? And then I noticed as it repeated, it would change a little bit. And so I started to explore more, like, why is it changing? What's the author doing? And then I hit on this piece of wisdom. So I'm going to share those three passages with you. We're going to read them together. So first passage is 2:16. Then the second passage is 6:3. And then it's 7:10. Okay, so this is a very beautiful passage. This is a passage which is usually featured on wedding rings, right, in the Jewish tradition. So I'm going to read the first one. This is chapter 2, verse 16. It begins like this, very beautifully. My beloved is mine, and I am his. So it's the woman, right? She's saying this, my beloved is mine, and I am his. This is an affirmation of their love. And then we have this strange little detail. In my translation, it says he grazes or he feasts among the lilies. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, so I'm like, okay. So let me write it down, right? So you have 2:16. You have my beloved is mine, and I am his. Make sure you write this down, right? And then he is hanging out among the lilies. Now, as I was reading this, I immediately start to notice something unusual, is the lilies. Anybody know what the lilies represent? When I first read this text, I was like, oh, this is sweet. You know, she loves him. And then he's there in the lilies, maybe thinking about her, you know, maybe picking up flowers for her. Like, what's the lilies? Who has a twisted mind? Who can tell me what the lilies are? Khalid, help us.
Maybe other woman.
Yes, exactly. I didn't notice that. It was actually, I was reading this with a male friend of mine. And he noticed it. I was like, what? There cannot be this in this text. It's a holy text, right? And yet it's true, because in the beginning of the book, remember, he calls her my lily, right? So we know that lily is a term of endearment for the beloved. And now if we have lilies, then we know that this has to do with other women, right? So what we have here in this first passage is her affirming her love, but he's not yet on the same page, right? So she's committed, but he's not committed, right? He's still out there. We don't know what he's doing with the lilies. Maybe he's just, you know, on an app with the lilies. Maybe he's, you know, just friendly with the lilies. Maybe he's, you know, actually in a relationship with the lilies. We don't know how far he went with the lilies, but he's certainly not entirely there for her. Okay, so now I'm feeling so desperate. I continue to read. I go to chapter 6, verse 3, and I find something very interesting there. So let's go there together. Chapter 6, verse 3. So I read and I see, okay, so in the English, it doesn't come out because there is a mistranslation. But actually in the Hebrew, you don't have my beloved is mine and I'm his. You have a flip. You have I am my beloved's. Okay, so there's a shift here and he's mine. So there's a shift. And then do we have lilies? Who can tell me? Are the lilies still there? Yes, Philippe is nodding, right? Yes, we still have lilies. So now we've made a little progress in the story. She's shifted something, we don't know what, but something has shifted. She's not saying my beloved is mine. She's saying I am my beloved. It's a little shift, and then the lilies are still there. Okay, sadly. Oops, sorry, I'm writing this to David. Let me go back to everyone in the meeting. Okay, sorry, so I'm writing this, so chapter 6, verse 3. I am my beloved. And then we have the lilies. Okay, now let's look at chapter 7, verse 10. Let's see what happens there. Now we have a very, very big shift in chapter 7, verse 10. Yes, so we have, okay, so we have the same formulation as right before. I am my beloveds. And then, do we still have lilies? Where are the lilies? What happens now? Who can tell me? Let's see. What do you see? Look at the text. So chapter 7, verse 10. I am my beloveds. And then, where's the guy? Where's he at? Philippe, go ahead.
It's in my book, it's verse 11. I am my lover's, he longs for me, only me.
Okay, the lilies are gone. And we have a drastic moment, right, we have a drastic shift in the man's psychology, right? Not only there's no more lilies, but he has a, and by the way, the word longing there is a very powerful word in the Hebrew, right? Teshuka, which actually means powerful, right? Focused, love, intention, right? That's really what it means. It's not just, have some feelings. It's like, I have come into focus for you, right? So okay, so this is a very interesting text. So it starts out, right? He's kind of all over the place. And then in the end, somehow she's able to magnetize and attract his commitment. And so my question to you, the $1 million question is at this point, how did she do it? I want to know, right? We all want to know this. At one point, we will be faced with a situation where our lover is not as into us as we are into them, right? And how do we then magnetize the commitment? How do we bring them back, right? And so all the clues are in the text. I wrote them in the chat on purpose. We have something. She did something. She shifted something. And then he shifted, right? Make sure you write this down. She shifts something and then he shifts. So my question is, what did she shift? There are two things she does that actually create the conditions of possibility for him to come directly back to her. So I'm curious. Let's see if you can find what she has done to attract that commitment. Okay, Kogan, you can start us off.
I'm not sure, but I think she's being a little less possessive when she says, like, my beloved is mine. Now it's like, I am there for him and he is there for me. And I think that's also seen in, like, he browses among the lilies and she lets him do what he needs to do. And she has this knowledge that, like, he's going to come back for me when he's ready, and he does.
Okay, you said two things. You said both. So number one, she releases him. Okay, notice that, right? That's the first thing she does. She moves from my beloved is mine to I am my beloved's. Okay, so she's in a way releasing the possessive grasp, right? Are you seeing that? Put your hand in the screen if you're following. Let me go back to gallery. Are you following me? Are you seeing? And okay, good, right? So that's the first thing she's doing, right? She's releasing him. But she's not only releasing him, because it could be the kind of release like, oh, you're going to see other lilies. Well, the hell with you then. Go to your lilies, right? It's not what she's doing, right? She's releasing him while at the same time, and this is point two, she's keeping the faith. In other words, she's remaining committed to the relationship. And I'm going to explain what this means. And then I'll get to you, Davido, right? Committed to him. In other words, she is choosing, right? I don't know what you're doing, but me, I'm in it, right? I'm going to put all my apples in the same basket. I'm going to give it all I got. I'm going to have no plan B. I'm going to give it my best shot, right? She's really, even though he's not committed, she's committing herself. It's a risk. It might not work, but it's the best thing you can do in that situation, right? And in a way, she's giving it all she's got. She's laying down her whole self for the relationship while at the same time releasing him, right? Remember that keeping the faith is inside. It's not, calling him, babe, I'm yours. I'm always going to be yours. How can you do? No, she's not telling him anything, right? It's inside. She's going to put all her apples in the same basket while at the same time externally releasing him and giving him the freedom to come back when he's ready. This is the tension. It is extremely difficult to do both because either we become obsessive, right? We keep the faith obsessively and we're like, babe, where were you last night? And I looked at your phone and who's that, right? And I'm scrolling down your text and what's this name here? And, and I was worried because I didn't hear from you in 2 hours, right? So now you're keeping the faith too much, right? So, or you can totally release and be like, you know what, I'm out of here, right? So it's the delicate tension between I am yours, yet I release you, right? I am yours, yet you are not mine, right? This ability to say both at the same time is actually extremely powerful. It has a powerful magnetizing effect. So what the text is saying is that if you are in that situation and you do want to give it a shot, right? You see the man or the woman, depending on who is your partner, right? You see your partner is not as focused as you, is not as into you as you are into them, and you want to give it a shot. That is what the text is saying will have an impact, right? Okay, David, you had a question. Go ahead.
No, it wasn't a question. It's just I'm in a place where I can't have my camera on. And so when you said to put the hand in the camera, I decided to raise the hand instead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now there's something else that students noticed with this text that I want to share because I found it pretty good. She and this is also very interesting. This is the movement from my beloved to I, from my to I. Students notice she reclaims her I. There's a third thing here going on, right? In other words, she was entirely merged in her lover. When she's saying, my beloved is mine, she's obsessive. There's only him. He's at the forefront. He's at the center. My beloved, my beloved, my beloved. And then she goes to I and my beloveds, right? So just this I, a lot of students notice that, oh, she's finding her I again. She's reclaiming her I. She's in a way coming back to herself, right? She's grounding herself. And by the way, you find your I when you release the other. Right? It goes together. As soon as you are able to release the other, you will find your I. Or sometimes finding your I helps you release the other. So in a way, not allowing yourself to get lost in the other, reclaiming who you are, your desires, your friends maybe that you lost, or your dreams that you sacrificed, or all the things you compromised on, right? These are all many ways that we lose ourselves in the beloved, right? And so her way of saying I, in a very powerful way. And then she's able to say, I am yours. Once I have found my I, once I have reclaimed everything I have lost by losing myself into you. Maybe I lost some friends. Maybe I lost some of my desires. Maybe I lost some of my integrity. Maybe I lost some of my values for you, right? So she reclaims all of that, and only then is she able to truly love him, right? So that's another thing that students also notice, is the ability to reclaim the I. Okay, so we have done good progress. Any questions on this passage before we take a break? Okay, good. All
I
right.
have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Am I interrupting someone?
That's okay.
Okay, so you mentioned the metaphor of her reclaiming somebody, reclaiming the things that she's lost. I wondered if you could specify how specifically she has reclaimed the things that she lost.
So, I mean, in the text, there's not so many details, right? But we can look at ourselves. What are the things we lose sometimes when we fall so hard in love, right? Sometimes, you will lose your own values, right? Sometimes you will compromise on your values, or sometimes you'll start to lose your dreams, right? You will become, you will sacrifice what you wanted to do for the sake of the relationship. Sometimes you'll lose your friends, right? Because maybe they don't like your friends. Sometimes you'll lose your family, right? So there are many things that when we become lost in the other, that we sometimes, and this doesn't help, right? This is actually pushing. Losing yourself in the other person will actually have the effect of pushing them away eventually, right? And so you always want that. One of the best ways to be magnetic is to be comfortable in yourself and not compromise on who you are, right? On being yourself is one of the ways one can reclaim one's magnetism that one has lost in constantly living for the other, right? Does that make sense, Davido, a little bit?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, let us take a break until exactly 4:15, and then we'll go to the last two sections of the text. Okay, so in 5 minutes, please come back with your faces on, and I will see you then for the last bit of the text. Okay. Okay, everybody, let's have your faces back on. Thank you. Please turn on your cameras again. Oh, I keep on forgetting to stop the recording. Oh, I'll just keep it. Okay. Okay. All right, let's have a few more faces. Davidov, Walrod, Brown, Corpaz, Falladeros, George, Talik, need your faces. Okay, looks good. All right, so we get now into, oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So now we get into the center of the book. So for those of you, if you don't know exactly where it is, this is the part where he's knocking on her door, right? And all of a sudden she's kind of lukewarm about him, right? She's been chasing him, by the way, up until chapter, I think it's in chapter 4, he does this, right? The center of the book. Let me check to make sure this is really, yeah, chapter 5. Yes, this is chapter 5 is the center of the book. So up until chapter 5, she has been chasing this guy, right? Really running after him, you know, looking for him in the streets, getting beaten up by the watchman because she can't find him. And, you know, and so, you know, she's been very, very obsessive after him, right? And then all of a sudden he finally gets up, finally he's making a move, right? This is really his first move in the whole story. She's been the one making all the moves. So finally he makes a move, a very audacious one, right? He's going to her house at night. He's knocking on the door. We know what he wants. And all of a sudden she just gives him the cold shoulder. And she's like, oh, you know, I took off my clothes. I took off my sandals. I took a shower. I'm in bed watching TV. Like, really? This is when you're going to come, right? So she takes so long, right, to get to the door that by the time she gets to the door, where is he? Can someone tell me? Is he there waiting with flowers? No, right? He's gone. He's gone. So this is, and this is the center of the book. So let me explain a little bit why this is so shocking, this story, that it is in the center of the book. So first of all, you need to know this. In the ancient Near Eastern literature, the center of the book was the place where you have the key to the whole book. This is the place where the author is going to make the revelation. In this case, what is love, right? Or maybe this should be the moment of climax. It should be the moment where everything falls together. Like, for example, I don't know, the first kiss, or maybe a proposal, or maybe the first night together, right? So, or the marriage, right? This is, we are expecting in the center of the book some powerful moment of love, right? And instead, we have this complete failed encounter, right? Where he is, you know, pounding on the door finally, and she's so slow to get to the door that he's already gone by the time she gets there. So they miss each other. We would have, I mean, imagine, right, if he had waited, what could have happened that night, right? And instead we have this kind of flop, right? So here's a question, right? As we're reading this, we know this is the important moment of the text, it's the center. Why is it that the author chose to write this story in the center? In other words, what does this story tell us about what love fundamentally is, right? Basically, the text is saying this here is love. This crazy missed encounter is love. That's the definition of love. So tell me a little bit, what do you think the author is saying? Why he puts that story in the center? This is the centerpiece, right? Why is it that this story is the one he chooses to tell us this is actually, you want to know what love is? Here it is, right there in that story. So let me hear you a little bit. Why do you think this story is so important? In other words, what does it teach us about love? What does this story of a failed encounter teach us about love? What do we learn here that is actually deeply meaningful if you want to understand what love is? Okay, Davidov, you can start us off.
Okay, so my interpretation of what this teaches us, and sorry for the echo, is that a relationship consists of two people who both want each other and both desire each other, but because of their differing interpretations of what love is and how to define it, they miss each other at the door, metaphorically. And so they're both trying their best, but because they have different methods, it doesn't, they're kind of walking past each other instead of walking to each other.
Excellent. Okay, so first thing we learn, and then I'll get to you, Philippou, right? First thing we learn is that inevitably love, because it is between two different people, there will be misunderstandings and there will be conflict, right? So if you're in a relationship where there are a lot of misunderstandings and conflict, you're in the right place. You are exactly where you need to be, right? Inevitably, because there is difference, there's going to be misunderstanding, conflict. And so in essence, we have to go into love knowing, right, that it's not going to be simple, that it cannot be simple. If we're going into love thinking is going to flow and it doesn't flow, and now we're doubting ourselves, should I be here? It's not flowing. There's a lot of misunderstandings and conflict. Is this the right person, right? The text is saying yes, right? If you're having a lot of conflict and misunderstandings, perfect. You're in the right place, because now you're really dealing with someone outside of yourself. Love is what will take you out of yourself into the other's world, which is not your world, right? And so inevitably is going to be a rocky ride, right? So that's the first thing we learned. Thank you, Davidov. Philippou, tell us more.
I agree, and I want to add on that I think the author put it there because he wants to emphasize that love requires compromise, because neither of them wanted to compromise in that situation. But this is the part where her beloved is also not yet hers. Like, it's before he became hers. So he is not ready to compromise, and neither is she. So they're not in love yet. And I think that's what the author is trying to convey, is not so much focused on like the sweet part of love, but what love actually is, which is compromising.
Love it. Absolutely, right? If only, right, she had moved a little faster, right? Or if only he had waited a little longer, it would have worked, right? So very often we don't realize, right? Give a little bit, like, it's okay to compromise a little bit, right? Because that is how you will create a connection, right? No compromise, no connection. I would go further and say, no sacrifice, no intimacy, right? This is, I think, the deeper lesson here. And let me write it down in the chat, because it's a very important lesson that most of us are not ready for, right? No sacrifice, no intimacy. Until you are ready, right, to sacrifice parts of yourself, right, for the other. In other words, make room for the other. Until you're ready to push yourself a little bit back, right, to make room for the other, you will never experience true intimacy. I have a friend who came to visit me. Hopefully he'll never see this video. So he's married now for 10 years with a very amazing woman, right? But each time he comes to visit, he's telling me, she's so rigid. I wanted to buy a microwave, but she won't let me. She says the kitchen is too small. And this is their life. This is what they're fighting about all day long, right? And at this point, the marriage is all on the rocks, right? It's in danger, right? Why? Because of little things like this. I want a microwave. I don't want a microwave. I want a curtain here. No, I want that color. And the inability, right, to kind of allow the other to choose sometimes, right, is in a way sacrificing the intimacy. If you want intimacy, you have to be ready for sacrifice, right? No sacrifice, no intimacy. By the way, in the Hebrew, since we're doing a Hebrew text, right, the word for sacrifice, korban, which means sacrifice, is from the same root of to come close, lekarev. So it's related, which means to come close. Okay, so these are semantically connected words, right? Korban is a noun that is built from the verb lekarev, right? To come close. And so they share, right? They share a meaning. Sacrifice is connected to proximity, to intimacy. If you want to come close to someone, you have to be ready to push a little bit yourself, contract yourself a little bit, sacrifice parts of yourself for the sake of the other. So beautifully put, Philippou. That's exactly what we're learning here. Now, I want to add something here. I'm seeing something else, right? You're both right. This is all true. But what I'm seeing here is a question of timing. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because I find that to be very interesting, especially when it comes to male-female relationships. I'm going to focus a little bit on that. Although you have that issue of timing in any relationship, you have it especially there because of the how different, right, the male and the female are. So I want to talk about this. It seems here that the man is very fast on the one hand, right? He's knocking. And the text, actually, the Hebrew is not knocking, he's pounding on the door. There's an urgency, right? And her, all of a sudden, uncharacteristically, she's slow. She's like, oh, I'm not ready to open the door. What are you doing? You know, not yet. I'm not, you know, she goes slowly, slowly, slowly. By the time she, and by the time she gets there now, somehow part of him is not ready and has left, right? So it looks here like we are talking about here two different rhythms. And I want to throw the hypothesis here that the two rhythms have to do with the physical and with the emotional. In the text, right, physically, the man is very fast. He's pounding on the door, right? The woman, all of a sudden, very slow. She wasn't slow before because she was after him emotionally. So she is fast emotionally, but she is slow physically. We know this about women, but here's what we can discover about men often. They're fast physically, and here's the part we as women often miss. They're slow emotionally. Notice how he's not ready, right, to wait. He's not ready to, he's insecure emotionally. That's why he leaves, right? So let me write this down and then we'll explore it further, right? So here's first stereotype we see here, right? Women, slow physically and fast, at least in the text, right? Fast emotionally. The man, on the other hand, fast physically and slow emotionally. Now, you can take it any way you want, right? You don't have to make it a gender difference, right? But in the text, we have this, right? So I'll talk about how the text portrays it, and then you can, of course, extrapolate and say, you know, sometimes the woman is the one, whatever, right? You can do what you want with this information. So, but let's stick to the text. So the woman in the text, right? Slow physically, but fast on her toes emotionally. She's ready to commit very soon, right? But physically, for the physical encounter, which is what he's asking for when he's knocking at her door at midnight, right? She's not that ready, right? The man is the opposite. He is quite fast physically, but we see how he commits very late in the relationship, right? So he's quite slow emotionally. Now, this teaches us a number of interesting things that we can then better understand to maybe avoid the misunderstanding. So let's talk to the men first. So suppose you're a man and you've been dating a few weeks or whatever, and then you decide, well, it's time to make a move, right? I'm going to make a move. So you make a move and she rejects you. Okay, what does it mean? It could mean two things. What could it mean? Tell us, women, enlighten the men. What does it mean? The guy makes a physical move on you. It's been a while, a little bit. You reject him. In other words, the guy's like, hey, you know, let's go up to your apartment, you know, or, you know, you want to come to mine, you know, and so forth. And you're like, no, I'm not going to go. No, you can't come up. Right? Now, what does this mean? It could mean two things, right? What are the two things it could mean? Ladies, enlighten the guys so they understand your erratic behavior. Kogan, tell us.
Either she's not interested or she's not ready for the physical.
Okay, excellent, right? So man, you need to know that either she was not ever interested and you misread the whole situation. It could be, right? But if you've been dating and it looks like you were in a romantic relationship, the moment she's saying no could simply mean she's not ready, right? Doesn't mean she doesn't like you, doesn't mean it's over, doesn't mean that, you know, you're an idiot, right? It simply could mean that she's not ready. And knowing this, right, can help the man renegotiate the situation and not feel rejected, right? Okay, Khalik and then Philippe, go ahead.
I was gonna say pretty much the same thing. It's either she's not interested or she's not ready. It also depends on how she says no. You know, sometimes it's the tone that you can just base off. Like if it's like no, like, you know, but if there's an explanation like, oh, you know, I don't think I'm ready for this, it's a different type of conversation.
Okay, very good. Yes, so you're seeing that too. Philippe, tell us.
Yes, I agree with both answers, but I think there's also another view is that she's already over you.
Filippo, you're ruthless. You're ruthless to us. It's already too late. You move too fast, you idiot. Okay, so yes, it could, well, if you've been, you have to read the room, right? The men, if you're dating and she seems, you know, still interested, obviously, of course, you don't want to do this after not seeing her for a month, right? And then yes, she's over you. So excellent. Now, this we know. And so what the invitation here, of course, for the man, in order to connect to the woman, the compromise, right, that needs to take place here for the men, and don't worry, we'll get to the women in a second, right? The compromise that is needed here is, in a way, the ability to wait, right? Here, the definition of love would be the willingness to wait for the woman to be ready, right? To be sensitive to her rhythm and to be sensitive to her pace, right? That would be love, right? So this we know, right? In our civilization, we've developed this very well, this notion, it's important the woman consent, it's important to respect her and to take, now, this we know, and the Song of Songs is just reminding us, but what we often don't know is the opposite for the men. So let's look at that, ladies, because often we lose patience with our men, and we do so because we misunderstand something fundamental about their nature. So let's go to the man. We know the man is fast physically, but what we often forget is that the man in his body, right, is going to be slow emotionally. And so it will take longer for the man to commit than the woman. And this is part of how the man is made up. It's not that the man is immature. It's not that the man is a player. It's not that you should break up with him because he's slow, right? Very often it is as hard for the man to open up emotionally as it is for the woman to open up physically. There is that much of a reserve, right? It is as difficult for a man to be vulnerable emotionally as it is for a woman to be vulnerable physically. And so very often we get impatient with men when they don't commit right away at our pace, right? And I'll tell you a funny story. There was a woman, very beautiful woman from Puerto Rico that I used to know. And there was this guy kind of, you know, circling her. And he was in, he was out, he was in. She couldn't, you know, get a grasp on this guy. And one day she told him, listen, either you commit or you're out of my life, right? The guy, he panicked, right? He brought her big flowers. He's like, yes, I'm committing, I'm committing. Guess what happened 2 weeks later? Done. The guy, he had fled as far away from her as possible. You can't force, we know this, right? Just like you shouldn't force a woman, right, to sleep with you. Women, we shouldn't force the man's commitment. It is as violent to do that as it is when he forces himself on us physically, right? We need to be respectful that the man is slower in those matters. The Chinese medicine explains this beautifully. I want to share this with you because it's a very interesting analysis in Chinese medicine. So Chinese medicine observes that, actually there's a Chinese saying that says, and I guess I'll put it in the chat, it says men are cold inside and hot outside. And then women are hot inside and cold outside. Who can translate this? Who can explain what's, it's basically a summary of what we just said. Who can explain what the Chinese proverb means here? What does it mean that men are cold inside and hot outside? Anybody know? Let's see, back on gallery. Kogan, go ahead. And then Walrat. Yes, sorry, missed you, Walrat. Go ahead.
It might be that men like talk a big game, but inside they're not ready, and women might be like shy and reserved, but inside, you know, they're ready and they want more.
Very good, right? Emotionally, right? They're cold inside, meaning emotionally in their hearts, it takes them a while to warm up, right? But physically, they're always ready, right? The woman is the opposite. Emotionally, she's always ready, always available, but physically, she takes some warming up, right? So just like, you know, we expect from our men, and we'll talk about this, by the way, in the last course, but we expect from men to warm us up sexually before they really sleep with us, right? We expect foreplay, we expect, it's the same thing with the man. The man also needs a type of emotional foreplay, right? In order for him to open up emotionally. And very often we don't know as women how to do that. But there's some very, very simple advice, right? how are you talking to your man, right? Are you talking in a way that shuts him down emotionally, right? There's a lot of ways, there's a way of talking to men that shuts them down emotionally. Are you complaining? Are you always critical? Are you always judging? Are you always unhappy, right? With this man, this will shut him down, right? And instead of getting what you want, you'll get the opposite, right? If we are trying to nurture commitment by complaining and being depressed, we are actually, the result, right, is shutting down the man's heart. And so there is an emotional foreplay we have to begin to cultivate for the man to begin to warm up. It is not easy for him to love, right, as it is perhaps for us. So that's just some interesting insight, right, in the dynamic that we need to know as men and women. And basically the lesson is here, right, the ability to wait for the other, the ability to woo the other, either physically or emotionally, and allow them to go at their own pace, and even try to create the environment so they can open up. This is also very important. It's not just waiting, right? Creating the environment. Are we as women creating the right emotional environment for the man to open up? Are we, you know, are we overly critical? Are we always depressed? Are we never happy or never satisfied, right? These are ways that you can shut down a man. And the man also, are you moving too fast physically? Are you rushing her, right? So these are all ways that we both have to learn, right? To wait on the other and to create the environment for the other to be able to open up. So that's the first thing we're getting. Any questions so far on this passage, or comments or observations or disagreements? Philippou, tell us.
Yes, I would like you to elaborate more when you said it is as violent for women to force a man to emotionally commit as it is when a man forced himself onto women. I highly, highly disagree on that. I understand the severity of forcing somebody to emotionally commit, but I do not think it is at the same standard as rape.
Oh yeah, obviously. Yes, yes. What I mean is it's a form of violence, right? Obviously it's not the same type of violence, right? But it is a form of violence when you are, yeah, trying to, it's not like a rape. What I mean is when the man, not raping, right? But maybe putting pressure, right? Hey, you know, why can't we, let's do this, and pressure and pressure and pressure, not rape, right?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
The same, we put pressure, right? I mean, so that's the idea here, obviously. Yes, thank you, Philippe, for that clarification. Sorry, my camera has stopped working. So, Georges, go ahead. You just have to listen to my voice.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's just it's like a juxtaposition. It's just that it could be with certain, like as the example that you said, if a woman has given a man an ultimatum of
Yeah.
whether or not, like if you don't commit right now, then we're done, and he'll rush into a decision, he'll do something that later on, 2 weeks later, he'll realize he didn't actually put a lot of thought into it, and afterwards he'll leave. And this is and it's not even in a sense of rape per se. It could also be some women are peer pressured into having sex, and afterwards, that's not what they wanted to do at all, but they were peer pressured into that situation. And so, it's definitely just the fact that, when you, as you said, when you pressure people into certain positions, they're likely to um have the opposite reaction that you thought that they would.
Excellent, right? Yes, I see that Philippe agrees with you. Very good. Absolutely, right? There are so many ways that we pressure each other. But as women, here's the difference, right? Men know now. They know better than to pressure us, although they still do it, right? But we feel very entitled to pressuring them and rushing them, right? And we need to be just as respectful. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. We need to be just as respectful of their rhythm as we want them to be respectful of our rhythm, right? They're not just immature, right? it's that physically is a different biochemical person, right? It's a different biochemical makeup. Okay, excellent. All right, so we have 20 minutes left. Let's go to the last part, which is grace in the Song of Songs. And so I want to offer this section to all of us who have messed up in love. How many of you have already, put your hand in the screen, if you've already made terrible mistakes, that is like, is it cringy, me too. I'm putting my hand also in the screen, you can't see it, right? So this is dedicated to all of us who, like the two people in our book, right, have deeply messed up, have really made fatal mistakes. And what we're learning from this book is actually that there is hope for people like us, right? Because we are dealing with two people who are as broken and flawed as we are. Let's go a little bit into some of the fatal mistakes they make. Okay, let's go to the woman. What is some of the mistakes she makes that any man would be done with her, like would be out of there if you were to make that mistake? Tell me, let's make a list of the moments where she really makes a mess of things. Anybody can see some of the stuff she's done that really is not a good idea. Kogan, go ahead.
When she doesn't greet him at the door in time.
Okay, so yeah, she's like, although, you know, that's understandable kind of, but yeah, maybe, yeah, okay, we can say that she has a bad sense of timing. It's good. We do that. All of us have a bad sense of timing. We miss things out. Okay, so good. Timing issues. let's call that. Let me write it down. So for the woman, we have timing issues. Okay, great. What else do we have? What else does she do that's really a turn off, right, for men, that somehow we wonder how this guy's still with her in spite of what she was doing? Georges, go ahead.
It's a term that people use modernly today. It's called love bombing. So it's like when you obviously show too much emotions at once. There's guys who you know, when you hit them with too many emotions at once, they'll tend to crawl into a shell because, you know, they're not ready to handle all that at once. So yeah, I would say like, so some guys would definitely think that's a red flag if she's showing too much at once, because it likely means that her other emotions are probably just as radical, such as anger or obviously sadness. You know, their emotions could be up and down a lot.
This is interesting. How do you call it? Love what?
They call it love bombing. Yeah.
Like bombing, like a bomb, like
Yeah, like a bomb.
oh, bomb,
Yeah.
like a bomb, like explosion.
Yeah. Like yeah. BOMB. Yeah.
Yes. Let me step on that because this is interesting, and then I'll get you, Filippo. I know you have a response to that. Let me respond to that because I find it intriguing as a woman, because we are very comfortable with our emotions as women and we want to be held in our emotions, right? And so we don't understand when the guy, and I've seen that happen, the guy is so scared, right, when we're become too emotional. And I think it helps to remember what we just talked about, right? Emotionally, right, the man is slow. And so emotionally, in a way, we have to be delicate, right? Just like, again, we want him to be delicate physically, right? We don't want him to just, we want him to be delicate with us physically. And perhaps, I think, Georges, you're opening up like a dimension here for me. Perhaps we ought to be also, we ought to be able to control ourselves emotionally, just like we want you to control yourselves physically. Do you see what I'm saying? Are you guys seeing what I'm
Most
trying?
definitely.
Yeah. So in a way, we expect restraint from men physically. We don't want them to just, take over. But but what I'm realizing here with what you're saying is that men also need certain restraint on our part emotionally, or they feel invaded and violated, right? In a way. So that's interesting. I thought. Now, Filippo, go ahead.
I agree with George's is what he said, because it also goes both ways, that men also love bomb women so that they would submit to having sex. But another thing that our character, like, I want to loop it back to the art of seduction, which is you're giving too much when you're love bombing somebody, and people don't realize when they're doing that, like it's not intentional sometimes, but it is very, very toxic and harmful. And another thing that our character does that is a red flag, I would say, is submitting to like what we would call like police brutality and then still wanting to find him. I find that really funny and a little outrageous in the book.
Yes, this is, and it's very delicately spoken of, but there is almost, you could almost see this could be a rape scene if you were to really take it far, right? Because they strip her veil, right? So, which is there's a lot of illusions there. So there is definitely brutality, and which could be even a violation, right? So yes, this woman is kind of some boundary issues, right? Maybe, let me write this down. My computer's slowing down. I have no equipment for this. Okay, Georges, did you want to add something, or is it just still your hand up?
Well, it's still up, but I actually did want to add something. I think there's also, I found it interesting that there's kind of kind of an opposite yin yangish relationship that complements both sides of um, women being slow physically and men being slow emotionally, especially if we compare it to the times that they're in the story. Uh, I would say that because for women, we know that the result of you being fast physically is obviously you're going to conceive a child, and that's obviously not a light situation, you know. So that's something that's big. So you want to make sure, one, you choose the right partner. You want to make sure that you're in a secure environment so that you can produce a child, and also so you could be in good health yourself. And also for men, we know that for, especially in a time frame as him, if he's a king, him being fast emotionally leads to him being eventually responsible for this woman. You know, he'd have to he's committed to her. He's taking care of her for the rest of his life. You know, maybe also her family as well. um Whatever she wishes and desires, you know, to his beck and call. So it's definitely parts that come out of both of it. Obviously for women it's a bigger sacrifice, but that's probably why, you know, even today when they even talk about marriages, and you know, people talking about protecting their assets when they get married and such. But I think that definitely adds on to how we naturally are slow in our own elements.
Thank you so much for that, because I was, I mean, I discovered there is a slowness, but I wasn't sure why until you said what you said today. Like, that is actually very profound, that there is a slowness because there's a sense of responsibility, just like we have a sense of responsibility for the potential child, right? The man has a sense of responsibility. And very often, I guess I'll add to that, because I've noticed that if the man is not yet ready in his own professional life, right? If he doesn't have a job, or if he doesn't know where he's going, he can't commit, right? Because he is not yet, he doesn't have the tools, right, to be responsible for that woman, right? So very often we get pissed, but we don't understand that the man is not yet, doesn't have a foothold on his own world, right? And so of course cannot commit, right? Because cannot be responsible, cannot even be responsible to themselves. So that's so helpful, George. I really appreciate that, because it helps understand, like helps us see that it's not just that, you know, it's immaturity, because we say it is, oh, they're immature, blah, blah. But no, it's actually maturity, what you're saying. It's actually a sign of maturity that they're slow, because they're not ready to. So thanks. I hope you guys wrote this down, ladies. This is we're getting some valuable information in this class that I'm also jotting down for myself. Excellent. Okay, now let's go to the man. What are some of the fatal mistakes that the man makes, that if you were dating this guy, you would be out? What does he do? There's the obvious. Davidov, go ahead, and then Jalal.
Too many lilies,
What?
as in too many other women in his life.
Too many women. Jalal, you want to add? Is there anything to add? Oh, I can't hear you. You're unmuted, but I can't hear you. You want to put it in the chat? Yeah, we can't hear you. Yeah, you put it in the chat. Oh yes, Filippo is Field of Lilies. Yes. Oh, my camera is back. Okay, that's nice. Right, very good. Too many women. I would add, you know, I guess, you know, kind of, I guess I would say slow, but now we know why he's slow, so we can't really we can't really blame him anymore, right? But definitely not committed, right? Not committed when she is ready, right? That's already a red light for us women, right? We get really impatient with that. Yes, he's moving at his own pace. He's not urgent, right? He might lose her. Very good. So, but especially, right, the infidelity, right? The potential infidelity. So they both really mess things up, right? And yet, if you go to the end of the book, I want you to go there. I mean, this is so surprising, because you're expecting eventually the relationship to unravel with all of these issues that they have. And yet you go towards the end, you go to chapter, let me get it here. Why didn't I write this down? Yes, chapter 8, verse 6. This is really towards the end of the text. We have this really beautiful statement, by the way, which is almost like a wedding. She's actually proposing to him. I mean, again, the text is so subversive, right? So this is a marriage proposal. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. And then she says, for love is as strong as death, jealousy as fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. right? Meaning now we have found a love that is made up of the fire of God, right? We have reached a love which is as strong as death. So you see how they make it, right? In spite of their brokenness. And so my question to all of us who messed up royally in the last few years, and when it comes to love, how did they do it? What is their secret? How come they made it, even though they're so messed up? What do you see in the way they are with each other that anyone can do, no matter how messed up they are? Okay, Georges, tell us.
Honesty. I don't think they ever like lied about how they felt in the moment. You know, she was obviously even aware that he had other quote unquote lilies. You know, and surprisingly, as crazy as it might sound, there's also women like that in real life who, if you tell them that you're intimate with other women, they're more comfortable with that versus them finding out by themselves. So,
Oh,
which is a weird thing, but if they find out by themselves, then you know you probably got hell to catch. But if you tell them, they'll probably some of them they're comfortable. They're like, okay, well at least I know where I stand. At least I know what's going on here. So I think honesty was a big part, and eventually, you know, it came to a point where they both saw eye to eye.
were they both what? Oh, eye to eye.
Where
Yeah.
they both worked with eye to eye. Yeah.
Yes, there is. You're right. There is a transparency in the text, and it's true. It's one less mistake to admit it, rather than the woman. Then it's a double thing, right? Not only you lied, but you cheated. So some women are relieved that you only cheated and didn't lie on top of it. So okay, very good. What else? There's two things that they're doing actually that really creates them, makes their love possible, and it has nothing to do with skill, with with knowing what to do. It's something that they do very instinctively. Philippou, tell us.
Is it faith? They both had faith in each other.
Okay, I'm gonna write it like that. Perseverance.
Yeah.
They persevere. They don't give up. At no point does the other say, you know what, I'm done with you, right? They go through all kinds of hurdles and they just hang in there for dear life with their imperfect selves, right? And they somehow make it through perseverance. But now perseverance is not enough, because we all know these couples that persevere and you don't want to be in their presence. They're so toxic. So there's one more thing they do in addition to the perseverance that really makes their love makes it grow into this powerful flame of God. What is the other thing they're willing to do, which really saves their love? Kogan?
Is it that they give each other space? Like respecting boundaries, that like she doesn't be on top of him and pressure him, and then he comes to her?
We talked about that. That's true. But I'm seeing something else which goes along with the perseverance. It's something, so you can say that, yes, but there's something else also that I'm looking for that they have to do. Otherwise, if you just persevere, right, it's not enough. We all know these couples who persevere and they're together for 30 years and you just can't sit in their presence because they're so toxic. So there's one more thing going on. Kalik, what do you see?
I think they were more like I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I just lost.
Okay.
Went somewhere else.
Who wants to help Kalik? Why is it not enough to just persevere? Why is there need for one more thing, which anyone can do, no matter how flawed, broken, messed up you are, you can do this.
I was gonna say they stayed committed to each other.
That's
Again.
I'll put that in perseverance. So we have that. They stay committed, they're persevering. But what else is needed for it to not become toxic? Because you can persevere in a toxic way. What else are they doing that anyone can do, no matter how flawed and broken you can do this? Georges, tell us.
I mean, you could continue to learn about each other. In order for something to, when people have perseverance, you know, people also say you have to make sure you change whatever is the problem still. You know, you have to be willing to actually tend to the problems within the relationship. You know, they also complement each other a lot. So yeah, they have the humility to change, yes.
Excellent, right? It's not enough to persevere, right? They also, even though they're very broken and flawed and they don't know what they're doing, right? Neither of them, and they're making all the mistakes in the book, they have the humility to change. And that is the key here. If you, even though, and we are all flawed and we will all mess things up at some point, right? In fact, it's interesting, in a Jewish wedding, they have a very interesting ritual, and I've always wondered what it meant, but now I get it. They take a glass, very small glass, and at the end of the ceremony, the woman stomps on it and destroys that glass. It's a very interesting symbol. Anybody know what it means? Why would she do that? It's a wedding ceremony. Why are you breaking glass? That sounds like a bad omen. Right? Kogan and then Davidov, enlighten us.
Well, traditionally at the Jewish weddings, it's, I mean, I don't think this is the answer you're looking for, but the reason behind it is typically the man crushes it, and it's like a sign of like to remember the destruction of the temple. It's like you can never be too happy if you're Jewish, even at your wedding, you know, you have to always like remember the pain. So you stomp at it like to remember like the solemnity.
So you said it still, what I'm looking for. The remembrance of the pain. You can never be too happy. What's the deeper meaning? Beyond the destruction of the temple, there is a meaning here with regards to the couple. Davidov, can you help us?
Yeah, so going off of what Abby said, the of course it's the remembrance of the destruction of the temple, but that in it's of itself isn't a random event at the wedding. It serves a utility, and there's this kind of belief in Judaism similar to yin and yang, that like nothing could be truly perfect or nothing could be truly evil. You need to have some underlying bad in the good, or some underlying good in the bad. And so when the man breaks the glass at the wedding, when it's broken, it's a sign like, hey, this, you know, this loud noise, this like messy piece of glass that's being broken, this is the worst thing that's going to happen on this wedding night, and that leaves the rest of the night open to be perfect.
Excellent. What the glass, the broken glass, is symbolizing is what the marriage will inevitably become. I am going to go further. All of us will come to the breaking point with our partners. We have to accept that. There will be that moment of betrayal. There will be that moment where you feel it's over, right? There will be that moment where everything shatters, right? And what the text is saying, at that moment, if you hang on and if you change, you can save your marriage, right? There is still something that can happen at that moment that can salvage the glass, right? That can repair the cup. And that only, it doesn't take skill. It doesn't take, you know, technique. It doesn't take, you can be very broken and do it. It's just holding on for dear life and having the humility to change. It's realizing that love will shatter at some point. And at that moment, yes, we are tempted to leave, right? And to break it off. But actually here lies a huge possibility, which is to mend the broken glass and to recreate a cup. By the way, is it in the Chinese or Japanese tradition that a broken cup is worth a lot more than an unbroken cup? Who knows this tradition? Anybody familiar with this tradition of broken cups?
I think it's Japanese.
Tell us, summarize to me.
I'm very vague with it because it's not my culture, but I know that there is a tradition. I think there's a certain like Japanese art form that I forgot the name of, where you kind of break a cup or break a piece of pottery and then you glue it back together to make like a different structure. And then it's like this process of like you break it and then you glue it back together differently, and then you break that again and then you glue that together differently. And so you just keep doing it to keep creating like different structures or different like art pieces.
Okay, good. I hadn't heard about the different structures. Filippo, you want to add, and then Josh?
Oh yeah, it is a Japanese tradition, but you basically fix it and you fill in the gaps with gold. So now it's the change that is beauty of the cup or the piece. So you fill in the cracks with like golden. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm going to come back to that. George, you want to add to that beautiful analysis by Filippo?
Yeah, I've heard about that. It's basically meant to symbolize that something isn't, it's like when something's perfect, it's not necessarily beautiful. It's in its imperfections and all the cracks and stuff that it gains its value.
Beautiful, right? So very, very nicely put, Filippo. The cracks are filled with gold, so it's more valuable, right? I want you to see your relationships like that. There will come a breaking point. There will come a moment where everything shatters. It is to the degree that you're willing to hang on and to the degree that you change, right? That you can then glue it back. And that relationship after the betrayal will be even more valuable than the relationship, the perfect relationship you had before the betrayal. That's what this beautiful Japanese tradition teaches us, right? And so here the lovers are giving us the key. Hang in there. Allow yourself to, and we see the change, right? We see the woman changing, right? She begins obsessed, you know, she's trying to be possessive, and little by little she releases him, right? And then he changes, right? At first he's just all over the place, has many women, and slowly comes into focus. So we need to realize, right? Love, in a sense, is not there just to embellish our lives, right? Love is also there to challenge our lives. And I like to compare love to a crucible. Let me write this down. A crucible. Anybody know what is a crucible? Those who do chemistry? What's a crucible? Anybody know? Georges, go ahead.
It's like a little pot that we usually use to we'll usually heat like a type of salt or powder in order to, if we're doing like titrations or anything like that. But it's usually just to change the form or liquefy whatever powder we have. But yeah, it's like basically like a pot.
Excellent, right? You have a pot. Inside you have some reactants, you have some different chemical elements, and then you put a fire. And the fire is going to allow these elements to blend or explode or whatever you're doing, right? That love is a crucible, meaning we are all in this crucible when we love. And to the degree that we stay in the crucible, even when it gets heated up, even when the difficulties arise, is the degree that that relationship will deeply transform you into the better version of yourself. The problem with us is we leave the crucible. The first sign of heat, we're like, oh my God, I'm out of there. Right? But what would happen? This is what I always ask myself, right? What would happen if I stayed? What would happen if I stayed? That is the question that keeps me going, honestly. That is the only, it is sheer intellectual curiosity that keeps me going at times. It is always the same question. What would happen if I stayed? What would change in me? What would change in them? How would we become maybe gold, right? How would we be transformed? And what is actually, how might the relationship, what would it blossom into? I want to know, right? So that's what we're learning here, is that they really choose to stay in the crucible. And that is what gives rise to their transformation as individuals and to the transformation of the relationship into something as strong as death, right? So that's the invitation, I think, of the text, right? So we see, it's interesting, text breaks all the rules, but it's even harder to do this, right? Than to follow some protocol, right? This is the real thing. How, you know, it takes a lot of courage and grit to stay in the crucible. I stay because of my intellectual curiosity, right? We all have, I think, reasons why we would want to stay. But that is the promise of love, right? If we stay, think of what could happen. Think of how deeply you could be transformed. Think of how deeply they could be transformed. Think of what the relationship could become. That is what I always keep in mind when the crucible gets a bit hot. Georges, tell us.
I think somebody recently spoke about this. Actually, yeah, I think it was Michelle Obama. She was talking about why the concept of marriage is becoming so abandoned in modern society today, and it's because at the first sight of diversity, you know, people start to run. But I was talking to my elder sister about this, and I think people fail to realize that every single marriage that's ever existed, you could write a book about. Like that's how complex and interesting and drama filled it is. Like every single one, you could write a book about like a 12 chapter book, and you know it'd be a cool story regardless. But I think you definitely gain something from it because you kind of like, it's two people who are completely different, and in order for it to succeed you have to learn to understand each other. So one, you gain better communication skills if you really are um committed to, or at least for that person, whatever that is for you guys. And you also find out about yourself. I will say that people show different uh attributes and signs of themselves when they're in relationships, like things that become exposed that they didn't know that they were that they had. You know, initially there might be people who walk around with anger problems or people who lack communication. They never knew that until they became into a relationship with someone. They're like, wow, I really need to fix that. Like, that's a problem. So it definitely makes you a more self-aware person because you can't always see yourself from outside in. You need someone else to do it for you.
Yeah, the marriage really strips you naked, right? You will realize, oh my God, I didn't know I was such a bitch, until I married you. So that's what happens, right? It really reveals like things that you didn't think you were. And then of course, you need to go and do that deep work, right? Absolutely. Thank you. And yes, Michelle Obama, we know from, I think I had heard that before, they actually had a lot of conflict, right? Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, because
Yeah, she said for 10 years, she said for like those a 10-year span where she was very unhappy. Yeah, she was like she was very unhappy for 10 years. Yeah.
Yep. So this and hanging on, look what happened, right? This is an interesting life now, right? It's not bad. So it was worth hanging on for this guy, I think. I thought I saw a hand with where did he go? Davidov. Davidov disappeared.
Sorry, I think that was a misclick.
Oh, sorry. Okay, excellent. So thank you guys. This was a really enlightening. I learned a lot. So I feel actually myself a little more hopeful now. This is why I teach the class, because it keeps me hopeful. So great. All right. So next time we're going to do Play-Doh. So I'll just tell you right now, right? Make sure you listen to the recording on our playlist. You do the audio question, you read the whole book, and then you will do the reading assignment for Play-Doh for next time. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so if you still have questions, you can stay. If you have issues with the drive, whatever, you can stay. Otherwise, you can go. I will see you next Tuesday. Enjoy Play-Doh, and I'll see you.
You.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Welcome. Thanks, Filippo.
Oh,
Okay.
Professor, I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, you go first.
I know that's okay. I was gonna ask who wants to go first. So go ahead, David.
Okay. I was gonna ask, where's the section with the audio question? I don't see it in the
Last page of the syllabus.
it's on the last page of the syllabus.
That's the audio.
Oh, I see.
That's where you
Gotcha. That's right.
good. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Khalik.
So I just wanted to make sure that whatever I uploaded, you're able to see it.
Okay, let me see if I got you today. No, I didn't see anything. You were probably the no-name person.
No, I uploaded it after the class started. 'cause I
Earlier.
couldn't
Then
do it.
probably it's there.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check because
Let me
I
see.
don't know if I did it correctly. If you're able to check, that'd be perfect.
Okay, I can't minimize while I'm talking to you, so I can't check. Wait, but how did I check before? I don't understand. Let's. Well, okay, here. Yes. All right, we're good. Did you upload in the late work or in the reading assignment? Oh, I see. Khalik, I see you. I see one. Yeah, you're good. I see you. Let me see if you have the audio question. Yes, you're good, Khalik.
Perfect.
Yeah, all set.
All right, thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Davidov?
Yeah, hello, Professor. I need to say this to you really quick before my phone dies. Uh, uh, so I think I was the no-name person. I re-uploaded my stuff to the late work folder with my name. So
let me take a look. Late work. Yeah, I see both. Excellent. Okay.
Okay. And also I wanted to let you know I think I'm gonna be missing class on Tuesday because I have a flight back to the States. And
so make sure you do all the work you can. You'll miss the 2 points of the
yeah.
but you can have all the other points if you hand them in, if you hand in the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll hand in all the other work, but I'll miss the lecture, and I'll it's going to be up on YouTube, right?
Yeah. Don't have. Oh, actually, I should stop the recording.
Okay. That's good. All right. Thank you, Professor. Bye.